What is up, my Shadowverse scholars, and welcome back to another Shadowverse Evolved Enverse Academy video. So, Umacraft came out during December 8th, and everybody picked up their product. I'm praying that everyone, pulled well and had good pulls. I'm very happy as for what my pulls were, I got my Daiwa Scarlet signed, and I'm pretty happy. But besides me, let's figure out what this deck does. So, let's go ahead and get into it. Alright scholars, before we get into the Umacraft breakdown, so if you don't already know that the Umacraft has limitations on release. So usually you can include 3 of cards in every deck besides Shenlong or, these cards. So with Umacraft, these are the cards that came out with Uma, and they actually make Uma a little broken. Trial Initiation and Econo Dictus, the reason why they're limited is because, if you include 3 of these in your deck along with Special Week, you're going to be searching for everything in your deck, just looking at top 3, and then, looking at top 2. If it's a Usume card, you reveal it and put it to your hand, and then Econo Dictus, look at top 3, it's an Amulet or a Usume card, add it to your hand. So, it was just, you can search everything. It kind of felt like Swordcraft with, everything that's being done and said. So these got limited to 1. So if you're going to rock the Umacraft deck, you can only have 1 of these both in your deck. So make sure of that whenever you build, guys. Alright guys, let's talk about Uma. So what really Uma wants to do is they want to play their followers, and then, if you have something that's, threatening and scary, they can, rush their followers into it, or, if it's not that big of a deal, they'll just let it sit. But, they're going to be doing a combination of things. They're going to be looking through their deck for Storm followers. They're going to be looking at top 2 with a certain follower. They are going to be using their Evos to give +1/+1 to all their other Uma followers. And then there's a certain follower that when you play a spell, it gets +1/+1. And then the follower, that exact same follower, says it costs less if there's another follower on play. And then, when you're playing that spell, that follower says, you can cast your first spell for the turn for free if it's a Uma card, and, so on and so forth. So there's a lot that's going on with Uma, and I'm proud that this deck came out because, it gave us, a little bit of breath of fresh air instead of the meta that we're in. So we have a new deck to watch out for, because Uma is very strong if you have the right pieces and you have the right build. So let's go ahead and figure out what in the world Uma does. Alright, so let's get into the pros and cons of Uma. So the first pro that we have, it's very aggressive. It can be a very aggressive deck because there are followers that have Storm that we're going to learn about today. And, you can search out those followers with Storm, and, sometimes they have an attachment to removal, or they have an attachment of, hey, when you do this, you can give your Uma follower +1/+1, which we get into this next section of buff. Because most of your followers aren't going to be swinging for too much if, they're on the lower end or, the mid-game end. But you can change that, because when you play that follower, they'll have, X skill. And usually X skill is, hey, you can either look at top 3 for a follower, or, hey, you can look through your deck, get a follower with Storm, put it into your hand, or, give this follower +1/+1. Or if you swing, give a +1. So there's definitely buffing that's going to be happening. They're going to get those increases, and that's what's going to happen with Uma. Now I add the question marks because how diverse Uma can be built, there's multiple ways the deck can be built. Guys, on Thursday, I have a build that I will be showing you guys. I will hold up to my end of the promise of me having a deck built on time. And we're gonna go over it on Thursday. But that's the build I'm going to be showing you guys on Thursday. But it's really random. It kind of feels like Forestcraft in an aspect. You're going to be going up against Uma, but what version of Uma are you going to go up against? That's going to be the real good question. And it's going to trip you up every time. So just make sure you watch out for what you're doing. And if you're removing their followers, then you don't need to be afraid. Now, the cons, on the other hand, is even though, yeah, it can be aggressive, it does seem like I'm being counterintuitive when I'm saying it's aggressive and saying it can't be slow. But here it is, it can be aggressive in terms of, hey, I have my one aggressive follower and I can swing with it. But, unlike Swordcraft, you know, they have their 3-drop Novice Trooper that swings for 3, and then, you know, that next turn you gotta deal with it. But in the later turns, you know, if you have that Leonidas Resolve, and then, you know, you're able to play those 2 Novice Troopers, and they become 6/6, you know, like, it's not as aggressive as Sword can be, as put on as much pressure, but in aspect, and can be slow. That's the one thing, is that, you know, you're playing the 1-drop, you know, trial initiation on turn 1, and then, you know, turn 2 you're probably searching for another card, or you're playing your 2-drop. So like, it's really up in the air how it can be. Now the other thing is, there's not too much removal in the deck. It kind of feels like Swordcraft. It does kind of feel like Swordcraft. There's not too much removal. Even with just the Abysscraft things that, you know, ping 3 and have wards, there's still not enough removal in Uma. And you can't side in any cards because you have to only run Uma cards. So there's no Execution, there's no Angelic Snipes, even though there is, you know, a version of Angelic Snipe in Uma, but it's still not enough because, you know, there's so many ways you can build it. And the last con is that there's the limitations. So we saw the limited cards that we saw in the beginning, and those cards really do help the deck, and having only one of those searchers in your deck does kind of hurt. And you can't, you know, actively just search out those cards from your deck. At least to my knowledge, from what I've been playing, there's no active way you can search out those cards. So those limits do kind of hurt the deck, because, you know, even Swordcraft can have all this consistency with their 2-drops, 3-drops, you know, search through their deck and search for a Swordcraft follower or an Evolve, you know. But, you know, Uma has its own thing where it's like, hey, you can't do what Swordcraft does. Too bad, get good. So I really don't know what to say in terms of that, but, you know, those limitations really do hurt the deck, because you can have really good consistency, you can really hit things off, at least, you know, letting it be at least a 2 of. You know, having, you know, trial initiation every turn would absolutely be ludicrous, and Uma's hand would be full like almost every turn if you were able to loop trial initiation, or, you know, keep playing it. Alright, so this is how I'm going to be breaking down the Uma deck. So it can run every craft. So here are the cards that I'm going to be showing you guys that are going to be worth in running your Uma decks. Now, in terms of these being actual meta, I'm not sure, because, you know, I don't think there's going to be any events. To my knowledge, I don't know if there's going to be any events for Uma to, you know, really shine its true colors. But you can build a rainbow, and that's the best part about it, is you get the best of all worlds. You get the best of all worlds. So let's go ahead and get into a couple of these cards. So we have Gold City. She's a 4-drop, you know, 3/3, but her fanfare ability is really what works out. So, you know, when you play her, she recovers 3 play points. And when there are at least 8 cards on the field, this follower has Storm. So you can definitely play 4, and then recover those 3 play points. You played 1, and, you know, if there are 8 cards on the field, then, you know, she has Storm. That last ability is cute, but we're really there for the fanfare and the recovering of 3 play points, because playing a 1-drop follower as a 3/3 is absolutely good in those later turns, especially when you want to buff. Next, we have Ishin Flash. So this is the Rose Gardener of Uma, and when you race her, you know, you give her +1/+1, and then you return an enemy follower on the field to its owner's hand. So it's just Rose Gardener for Uma. We run that in Uma because, you know, it's Uma specific, so there's removal for it. We have Marvelous Sunday. You can return another card from your field to its owner's hand, and then, you know, give your leader +2 defense. It's a pretty good 2-drop if, you know, you want to cycle something out that might potentially die that you want to keep, and then, you know, heal. And then Eat Fast, Yum Fast. You know, you choose one of the following. You can search your deck for a follower with Storm and reveal it and add it to your hand. We'll get into that in the next card that we're going to see, because it has Storm, and it's going to be very good. It's with the Evo and itself. And then you can either select the follower with Storm on the field and give it +3 attack. So it has the flexibility of either searching that Storm follower, or if you already have a Storm follower and you want to go for a big turn next turn, this is what I'm talking about that buff. So you can spend 2 and then, you know, give it that +3. And then with a card later on, this card, if you do this card first as your first spell for the turn, then it'll be free. And if you already know what card we're talking about, and it's going to be crazy. But if you don't, then get ready when we get into the Runecraft section. And then next we have Smart Falcon. you know, you race her for 1. But, you know, when she's played, you return any number of other Uma cards on your field to its owner's hand, and you deal X damage to each enemy following the field. X equals 2 times the number of cards returned. So, you know, it's doing what Force Craft does. If you know, swing face, and then, you know, they don't have a ward or something, or they have the big field, and you just want to swing face, do some big damage, you can play Smart Falcon. You bounce back everybody you had back into your hand, you know, at least 4, and you're doing 8 to the field, and that would be pretty good. So let's get into the Premier Legendary for Uma for Forest Craft. So we have Silent Suzuka here, and she has Storm. She's a 4-drop with Storm. You know, she doesn't have the best stats. When you look at her, she kind of reminds you of Roach, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But, you know, the fact that you can search this card out with the Forest Craft, and then also the fact that you can buff up this card with Force Craft, making her a 7, is also good too, because she'll be swinging for a lot. And that's what I mean in terms of the buff, guys. So, you know, she has 4 attacks, she gets that 3, 7, that same turn. That's scary, that hurts. But also, you know, not only does she have the Storm and can get the plus from the other cards, when you evolve her, you know, you can select the enemy following the field and put it on the top of its owner's deck. So you can control what they're going to draw next turn. If they have a threatening card that doesn't have Storm, and, you know, also doesn't have Aura, you can put it on the top of their deck, and, you know, they already know what they're going to draw next turn. You stall their deck that next turn, and you probably might change their play lines, because, you know, they might be expecting, hey, I need this card on the field. Well, you know, I evolved Silent Suzuka. You know, it feels bad. So this card is very good in terms of Uma. I would run 3 of it because, you know, just Storm is just good. But however you want to build Uma, this is definitely a good look at what Force Craft provides for Uma. All right, let's go ahead and get into the Dragoncraft portion of Uma. So these are the cards, you know, if you know what Dragoncraft does, you know, Dragoncraft is ramping, playing those big bodies fast, you know, doing what Dragoncraft does. Well, Uma isn't going to be doing that. But Uma does have the big followers, and, you know, the kind of awkward followers too. So let's go ahead and get into the first one, that being Oguri Cap. So the whole mechanic of Uma is you're able to race followers. And that's, you know, the unique thing about Uma, is racing the followers and giving a rush. Well, Oguri Cap says you can race a follower 3 times, that exact follower 3 times. And every time you do, you give this follower +2, +1. So she gets that buff that we were talking about earlier. And, you know, also when you play her, she has the fanfare of discarding 2 cards from your hand, and you give this follower Storm. And then on top of that, you know, if it just wasn't enough that you can race her 3 times and get that huge buff, and then also give her Storm, which, you know, with the Tasty Yum Fast, if you actually chain this together, would be absolutely ludicrous. You know, you can on strike deal 3 damage to each follower on the field. So if they don't have a strong line of followers, you're late in the game, and you want to just wipe face the entire board, you're able to do that with Oguri Cap. So this card does a lot. And saying that it's not the premier card for Dragoncraft does seem a little crazy, guys, I know, but it's not. So let's go ahead and get into the next card, Super Creek. And if you know, you're caught up with Shadowverse, then this is definitely the reason why Shenlong was limited, and I will preach this up and down. This is probably why Shenlong was limited, because it's a sick drop with Ward, and then on Fanfare you give your leader +5 defense. So, you know, if the original play with Shenlong being at 3, you play Shenlong, you Evo, and then, you know, you get that +5 defense, you know, the filter that you needed, you know, you engage Shenlong, and then next turn, if you didn't take care of the Shenlong and you didn't hit, you know, the Dragoncraft follower, they were playing Super Creek next turn, and they were on a huge curve of 10 health, and, you know, they didn't even need to do too much, like in Statute Seraph, and getting those prayer counters. So that's Super Creek. Super Creek is definitely Dragoncraft. It screams Shenlong. It screams Shenlong minus the filter. So this is the Shenlong killer, and I will always believe that. If I have fun trying to convince me that it's not. Now, next we have Hishiaki Bono. So this is a 10 drop that, you know, when you play it, you give your leader +10. So honestly, that in terms with Super Creek and Shenlong, Dragoncraft was, you know, popping off with health. It would feel like Havencraft at that point. But, you know, it's a 10 drop, 10/10. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a big 10 drop play that you can play in Uma. and I wouldn't hate it. You know, if you're really on the back end and you need at least like one of these in your deck, that's not too bad. And you have a 10 drop 10/10. If they don't remove it next turn, then you know they're swinging for a lot. And next we have a card that you know you probably want to run in most of your Uma decks, but it has a cool ability. So you know you play her. She has Storm and Intimidate. So Intimidate is actually a pretty good card in terms of you know Swordcraft and you know Dragoncraft. Well, not necessarily Dragoncraft, but Abysscraft, because this card with Intimidate means you can only target it with spells. You can't swing at it with followers. She has Intimidate. And then she has an awesome ability, you know, for Strike to give this follower a +1 attack. So this, along with Tasty Yum Fast, I don't know if I'm saying that card correct. I'm sorry, I just read it, guys. I apologize. But that, with Tasty Yum Fast, you're going to turn this follower into a 5/3 if you have the potential to do it, and you're swinging for a lot hard. So it kind of feels like a little bit of a discount Forte, like really discount. It's like the other version of Forte, just cheaper and you know budget. It really feels like a budget Forte. That's really what it is. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the premier legendary for Dragoncraft for Uma, and that is Special Week, the main character. So Special Week, it's the reason why you know you probably can't run Trial Initiation and the other card as a 3/of, is because you know you spend 2 and you look at the top card of your deck. If it's an Usume card, you may reveal it and add it to your hand. So that, along with Trial Initiation, you're doing the top 2. You know, you get a Uma, spend 2, play Special Week. You know, look at the top card. If it's a Uma card, then you know put it to your hand. And you know if you're running the Uma deck, you're not gonna miss because every card in your deck is Uma. You just won't miss. It's just not gonna happen. So you won't miss, and you're gonna hit all your targets you want to. But her Evo is actually good because you know on Evolve, if Overflow is active for you, so turn 7 afterwards, and because there's no ramping here, you know give each other Uma follower on your field +1/+1. So you know that goes along with the buff. So on turn 2, you're gonna play her. You know, do what you need to do. Look at the top card of your deck, add it to your hand because that's what you're gonna do. And then you know in those later turns when you've gotten your field a little fatter and you've gotten quite the board to swing, you can definitely add some more pressure to it with that buff. And that's what we were talking about earlier with the pros, is that you know with this Evolve with Special Week, you're definitely gonna be swinging for a lot more than your opponent calculated for, and that'll definitely throw them off their game. All right, let's go ahead and move into the Swordcraft aspect of things. So I know there aren't as many cards as you saw in the other one, but you know these were the cards to really just mention for Swordcraft. These are probably they're not the strongest cards, but they're good. Some of them are good tech options, and some of them you know you just put in your deck. So let's go ahead and get into Winning Ticket. So Winning Ticket is a Storm follower. So you know the racing thing and the Storm thing, just going for face really seems what Uma wants to do. But you know if you position your things correctly, you'll be swinging for face a lot in those later turns, because you know those early turns, you know just having a 2/2 Storm on turn 3 while Swordcraft has a 3-drop 3/3 Storm, you know doesn't seem fair. But you know with Winning Ticket, when she comes into play, if there's a Trial Initiation and a Narita Taishin in your cemetery, give this follower +3/+1. So Narita Taishin is a follower that's just a 2-drop. You know, you can have her in the cemetery. She's definitely good. I would tech in at least 2 of her for a deck if you're gonna run Winning Ticket as a 3-of, or you know as 1. Just have the Narita Taishin in the Trial Initiation. It doesn't hurt because having a 5/3 as a Storm for 3 is not bad with those requirements, especially being the fact that you can only run Uma things. So it's not bad. Then we have Symboli Rudolph, and she's kind of weird. So her last words effect is you search your deck for Tokai of Teo, and we'll talk about that in the next one. And you know reveal it and add it to your hand. So if you're having problems searching for your Storm followers, which you shouldn't if you have that Forestcraft card, but you know if you want to search for another Storm follower where you know you can get Silent Suzuka and then evolve it and then put a card on the top of their deck, and then you know maybe put in Symboli that next turn to get the Tokai Teo to have another Storm follower if you don't have any sort of removal, to get rid of things, and you know you can erase her, so that definitely helps against the aggressive matchups. And you swing 3 at something, you go ahead and get your Storm Follower, which we'll talk about in a second. And then we have Narita Bryan. So this card is good for Swordcraft itself, and it's good for Uma. I can't see anybody running 3 of this card. It's very, very good. Don't get me wrong, it's very, very good, but I don't think anyone's going to be running 3 of it. So it's probably going to be a 1-of tech in all decks. Well, all but 2 decks. But you know, when she comes into play, nothing happens, but she has Bane, Ward, and Aura. That's a lot of skills for something that's so good. And then you can engage her, and you can select the enemy leader or enemy follower on the field and deal it 5 damage. And you know what we talk about on this channel, guys. If it's 5, it's mid. It's probably doing a little bit, you know, something special, and then has that plus attack, but 5 usually takes care of most followers. 5 takes care of, you know, 75% of this page. So, and the fact that she has Bane, Ward, and Aura, so everything that swings into her is going to perish, and you can't just straight out remove her with execution or any of your spells. You're gonna have to get rid of her the old, you know, fashioned way. You're gonna have to swing into her, and swinging into 8 out of 6 is very, very hard. And you don't even need to swing when she comes into play to activate the ward. You can switch her and engage her, and then deal 5, and she's already warded up, so she gets the best of both worlds. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into the premier card for Swordcraft, and that's Tokayo Teo. So this card on face just doesn't look like it does too much. It helps Swordcraft out some because, you know, Swordcraft needs removal. But Tokayo Teo, you know, you evolve her for 2, you can erase her for 1, but when she comes into play, you select the enemy follower on the field and deal it X damage. X equals 2 times the number of followers on your field, including this one. So if you have 2 on the field, you're doing 4. If you have 5, you're doing 10. So, you know, it's 2 times whatever is on the field. So this is something that Swordcraft needed with some removal. I know Swordcraft turns 5 and 6 were kind of weird. Well, turn 6 was just definitely weird if you didn't have Evo. But, you know, turns 5 and 6, you know, you definitely have something to do, especially like if you do Floral Fencer that turn 4. And then, you know, Tokayo Teo really helps out that next turn. And then if you evolve Tokayo Teo, she has Storm, so that's even better. Like, it's just it's a Storm follower that doesn't have Storm, so you can't search it out with the Tasty Yum Fast. But, you know, with the Rudolph, you can search out Tokayo Teo, and then, you know, you can move forward from there. So this isn't a bad choice. This is the premier card for Swordcraft, and it is very, very good. Alright, let's go ahead and get into the Abysscraft part of Uma. And just by looking at some of these cards, if you don't already know what they do, the Abysscraft version of Uma is very good because it's more of a control standpoint of removal. You would think that's what Havencraft would be doing from, you know, Themis Decree and having all those removal cards, but it's really on Abysscraft for Uma. And looking at Nice Nature, this first card that we have, you know, you select the enemy follower on the field and give a -1/-1. That's very good because, you know, just imagine yourself going up against Aggro Abyss, and, you know, those goblins and stuff, the Ambling Wraith that they play, those turns 1 and, you know, 2 onwards, they're not going to do that much because when you play it, you're going to -1/-1 them, and they're not going to swing as much, and they're not going to have as much defense. And you can swing into them next turn, you know, not care too much because, you know, you already gave them that debuff and it feels pretty good. But also another fact that when she dies, each opponent discards a card. So that actually brings the new Abysscraft card, deck back to life because you can control their field and then you can make them discard. So if you haven't watched my discard video, go ahead. And the next card we're going to be looking at is My Solodron to Raindrops. So, you know, it's kind of like Execution since Uma can't run Execution, and, you know, minus the getting rid of an amulet card. But, you know, if there are at least 10 Uma cards in your cemetery, this card costs 2 less to play. So that's very good. So it's a cheaper Execution if you have those 10 cards in the, you know, cemetery. And then you just select the enemy follower on the field and destroy it. Very good for a quick, because that's something Uma needed, was a quick removal spell. Because they didn't already have enough removal as is. Then you have Murzinski. So Murzinski, you evolve her for a 1. Her evolve doesn't do too much. She just gives the extra, you know, neg. But you can also race her. But she has a Necrocharge 10. And if you have 10 cards at the cemetery, you select the enemy follower on the field and give it -4/-4. And then when you evolve her, you give her -2/-2. That's nice, you know, -6/-6. Just remove something in general. So it's not bad in terms of removal. This is pretty good, but you know, having the necrocharge effect probably is a little harder because you're gonna have to go through your deck quite a bit, or you're gonna have to tech in those Abysscraft followers that mill. But you know, with just how Uma's played, I think just adding in the Mrozinski and then getting to those turns, or just running my solo drawn, is just the better option. And then we have Rice Shower. So Rice Shower actually helps you with the mill. So you play her and you select the enemy following field and deal it 3 damage. And put the top 2 cards of your deck into your cemetery, so it helps you with that mill. And then her last words is you select the Uma follower with the different name from this card in your cemetery and add it to your hand. You know, I had to add the different cards in this name. So you don't sit here and cycle Rice Showers, so you can have wards every turn. But you know, you can get back most of your you can get back every follower in your deck. So that's pretty good for Rice Shower, and it does the 3 damage, so good removal, and then the ward to, you know, stall the game out. So that's pretty good in terms of Abysscraft. Alright guys, we're going to be moving on into the Havencraft. I know, I'm sorry guys if you didn't like the fact that it didn't add Mrozinski as a, you know, premier card, but she got added because she is still good, but I don't believe she's going to be like the best card for Uma. But you know, personally, I think that's just me, but you guys might differ. You know, leave in the comments if y'all disagree with that. I'm okay with that. I love you guys. But let's go ahead and move on into Havencraft. So Havencraft really focuses on, you know, the amulets and all that. The amulets aren't too good in terms of, you know, running them as Uma specific. Just so you know, you can look at top 3 with the Will to Overtake, and that's nice and cute and everything, but that's not really what we're going for with Uma, with how it just looks, with, you know, the fact that we're plussing up, we have those Storm followers and those other crafts that really chain into everything. And when we get into the next craft, Runecraft, then you're really probably going to understand why we don't really want to run amulets too much. But let's go ahead and get into the first card. We have Major Dauber, and you know, you race it for 1, and on race you give this follower +1/+1, and then you give your leader +2 defense. So this is a card that's pretty good in terms of, you know, tech options for Abysscraft, and they're giving you some trouble, so you can heal those early turns and then, you know, swing into those guys. So that's pretty good. Another tech, it feels like Heaven's really just tech heavy, and Haven has the next card for, you know, TM Opera O. So it's a 7-drop. I know it's expensive, but you know, she's a 6/6. That's not bad. But you know, when you play, you select the enemy following field and banish it and draw a card. So that's pretty good in terms of, you know, getting rid of that Leonidas. If you know you don't have anything swung that next turn, you can respond to that Leonidas turn. And then we have Econodictus, the limited card that, you know, would be absolutely ludicrous. It was at 3 of, and then, you know, you player, you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, you may reveal the amulet or Uma card from among them and add it to your hand. Put the remaining cards of the bottom of your deck in any order. So this is what Havencraft you really want to add from Havencraft into your Uma decks. These are probably like the strong 3 cards I can think of. As far as the other cards, I wouldn't recommend them because you're not running amulets too much. But the next card we're going to be talking about is kind of like a tech heavy thing. It's really weird, but it also would help if you do put it into your deck. I don't see... It's very memey. I will tell you, the next card we're going to be talking about is very memey, so get ready for it. Alright, and the next card we're going to be talking about is Gold Chip. So, if you want to run a really meme version of Uma, this would probably be the card for it. So, this card, you know, you play it, you reveal the top card of your deck, you deal X damage to each enemy leader, give your leader +X, X equals the revealed card's cost. So if you really want to run your own version of Uma and be different, there is a version with Gold Chip as the premier. So you rock Gold Chip and you have Narita Bryan because she's usually... You either rock Narita Bryan or the neutral follower that costs 10. And you really want to control what's on the top of your deck with the Will to Overtake. And, you know, you make sure whenever you go for this turn, we'll go for that play line of Gold Chip. Make sure you're on turn 9. And, you know, make sure you keep Narita cycled at the bottom or, you know, cycled in your deck. And then you shuffle, and then you make sure your biggest follower or biggest card is on the top when you do the Will to Overtake, and you play Gold Chip, and then you heal and you do that damage, and, you know, it should put you ahead a turn if you gain enough life. So it's really memey. It's just a huge meme, and it's pretty strong too if you rock it in the Statute Seraph, you know, Havencraft. I wouldn't sleep on it because that's the build I'm running. And if you guys have checked me out on stream and everything, that's one of my builds that I enjoy. It's pretty fun. It's probably what I'm going to be rocking until the eggs come out for, next set. So this is, I would say, this isn't the premier card. It's not the signed one. But this is probably something you can probably think of putting into your Uma build. Alright, moving forward, we're going to be moving into Runecraft, and if you already know what Runecraft is, it is definitely Shadow Wizard Money Gang. We love casting spells, and the spells that we got through Runecraft were actually pretty good for Uma. They're not too bad, and the followers are there to match too. So, the first card we're going to be talking about is the Lamplit Training of a Witch to Be. It's definitely the Angelic Snipe replacement for Runecraft and for Uma. So, it's a 1-drop quick, you select the enemy follow in the field and deal it 2 damage, and if there's a racing follow in the field, you actually deal 3 damage instead, so that's pretty good. And then we have Daiwa Scarlet, so I want to apologize in the earlier synopsis that I was giving for Uma. I was thinking that the first spell that you played was free, and that is not true. It costs 1 less. And that is fine. I apologize for me saying that earlier. I misspoke. I was just going off the top of my dome thinking of things. We have Daiwa Scarlet, you can race her, and when you play her, she kind of feels like Merlin. You can search your deck for a Uma spell and reveal it and add it to your hand. And while this card is on your field, the first Uma card, or Uma spell that you play, each turn costs 1 less to play. And when you play a spell, if it's your 3rd spell this turn, select an Uma follower on your field and give it and this follower Storm. So, if you get into those later turns where you're playing Daiwa Scarlet, you're doing the removal, and then you're playing other spells on top of that, that's cool. And then, we have Vodka that also pairs with Daiwa Scarlet. If there's a Daiwa Scarlet on your field, this card costs 2 less to play, so she's a 1-drop. She also can race. And then once per turn, when you play a spell, give each Uma follower on your field +1/+1 and rush. So if you have a field full, this card also chains together well. So, if you play Daiwa Scarlet in those late turns and you play Vodka and, you do 1 spell plus everything up, and then you do 2 more spells after that, you can give Daiwa Scarlet and Vodka Storm, and you can swing face for a whole lot of damage, if you also have the special weekend play to do the Evo, which would be cool too, and it would be a crazy cool combo. And then the last card we have is the Surefire Bullet for Uma, and select the enemy follow in the field and deal it 3 damage, and if there's an Uma card on your field, deal 4 damage instead. So the requirements of not having Evo is actually pretty good, but having Uma isn't hard if you're just rocking the Uma deck. But if you're trying to run this in the Runecraft, I think you're better off just running Surefire Bullet, because, you just want to be reactive in response to your opponent's things. Alright, and the premier card we have for Uma at Runecraft is Agnes Tashion. So she doesn't really do too much, when she's played, but, you can evolve her for 1, and then you can also race her for 1. But, whenever you play a spell, you select the enemy follow in the field and give it -1/-1. That's actually pretty good in terms if you're using your other spells, if you're not, already using your removal spells that you have, or if you see them. But you can keep giving them -1/-1. So hey, I have my Storm follower, I can give my Storm follower +1/+1, and I'm gonna give your followers -1/-1, which actually is pretty good for those early aggressions like Abysscraft and stuff like that. And then I really like her for Evolve, that on Evolve you select a spell in your cemetery and you add it to your hand, so you can keep cycling your removal spells or any of the spells that you need. You can just get it back into your hand. And then she still has that when you play a spell, you give something -1/-1. So this is a pretty good card that you could tech in for, Abysscraft or any. I guess you can really just keep her in like a stationary build. But this is really what I mean in terms of how you build Uma. There's lots of ways you can build Uma. You can build it like a removal specific if you want to help with that, your con end of, not too much removal. Or you can build it with a face-wise, so you can swing Storm and, give the buffs, There's just lots that you can do with Uma. And let's get into the neutral cards for Uma. So the neutral cards are actually pretty good. They are a little high-end on terms of, cost of playing them, but I think their abilities make up for what they do in terms of their cost. So first we have Rico, and Rico's not that bad. She has Rush. And then on Strike, if there are no other followers on your field, you select the enemy follower in the field and destroy it and deal 3 damage to its leader. So that's pretty good in those late terms. If if you're against Havencraft or a craft that's just straight up removing things, you can have a follower with Rush, swing face or swing at whatever follower they have, and then destroy another follower or destroy that follower, and then deal them 3 damage, which is pretty good. And then we have Tezuya, and she has ward, and then when she comes into play, you select the Uma follower or, you know, amulet, Uma amulet that costs 4 play points or less in your cemetery, and put it onto the field. So with a combo that I was thinking of, you can actually, you know, do Tazuna with Daiwa Scarlet, and then that go ahead and search your deck for a spell, and that spell costs 1 less, and you can give, you know, that follower Storm, or you can, you know, do whatever you need to do to get back into the game to go ahead and start that recursion of, you know, striking back. And, you know, she's pretty good because she has ward, and the only other card with ward, I believe, in Uma is Right Shower. And then I feel like this next card we're going to talk about is really just the ult for Uma, and it's cute. I like it. It being practical, I'm not sure, but it's definitely a fun option. I would not hate on it. So you shuffle your deck, and then you reveal the top 6 cards. You may put any number of Uma followers or Uma amulets from among them onto the field, and add the remaining cards to your hand. So you reveal the top 6 followers, amulets. They go on the field. They go on the field. Whatever is not going on the field is going to your hand. But the fact that this being a 10 drop and it just being a spell, you know, it's not a follower, but you gain followers off this, and you can probably fill up your field if you need to. So it's pretty cute, and I would like it. I would put it in my build, just, you know, just for the fun of it, of a fun build. But competitive wise, I don't think this card is going to be too practical. All right, scholars, thank you so much for, you know, just sticking with this. This is definitely a lot because Uma has a lot to unpack. It's definitely a very, very strong deck coming into, you know, this collab set, but the game plan is pretty complex. I had a problem, you know, trimming down what we really want to do with Uma, because there's multiple lines that you can do. There's the gold chip line where you can meme and, you know, burn and deal damage, and it being like a huge body that next turn if they don't remove it. And then you could also go the, hey, you know, I'm going to search my storm followers out, and I'm going to swing face the turn I play them. Or, you know, you can play in the back line and, you know, like have the followers deal with their followers and wait for them to, you know, gas out, which is probably the harder route because, you know, you don't have terms of too much removal, and, you know, all your followers really do what they need to do in terms of abilities. Or, you know, the best route, which I've seen so far that has the best results, is, you know, you do the trial initiation like at the top 2, and then, you know, you can add that spell back to your hand. You know, you can keep doing that, you know, loop it with Agnes, even though you have the one of, so it's going to be very hard to, you know, just get the one of in your hand as is. But, you know, the loop route where, you know, you're running the Agnes with the trial initiation, you're looking at your deck, seeing what you need, and then, you know, moving forward with a special week to get those top cards, and then, you know, you play the vodka into the Daiwa Scarlet, buff your entire board that one turn, and then the special week to buff your board that second time, and then, you know, use that 2 other spells that you need to do for Daiwa Scarlet, or, you know, the 3 total, and give her and vodka, excuse me, Storm, or another Uma follower Storm that you probably played this turn. And it's going to be very good because, you know, your whole field is going to be very, very strong, and you have very good end game, which with the Ogre recap that we're looking at, that can really, you know, finish things off if you race her enough. So there's lots of things you can do with Uma, so I can't really give a general game plan of what will happen, but, you know, what I just described is probably like the best outcome of a route with the special week buff, with the vodka buff, and, you know, swinging face with the Daiwa Scarlet to give Daiwa and something else Storm if you've done all that in the, you know, same turn if possible. But that's really what's going to be happening with Uma. All right, let's go ahead and get into the good and bad matchups for Uma. So on the competitive scale, Uma actually can perform, but what Uma does struggle against is, you know, the only way you're going to be dealing damage if you're not running gold chip is through followers. So if your followers don't stick, you don't feel good because you need your followers to do damage. So in terms of Swordcraft, you're like Swordcraft in terms of things. If your followers are getting removed, what are you going to do? So these are the decks that have good removal, and I've seen that can perform very well in terms of, you know, getting rid of things for Uma, and that's in the form of Havencraft having Themis, you know, just to wipe your board. And then, you know, Runecraft, just being Runecraft and being control and getting rid of your things, and then Dragoncraft because it's probably one of the best terms of like removal and followers just swing hard at you and have like a pretty solid defense. So these are the 3 decks you probably want to watch out for if you're going to run Uma, because they really do hurt you. But if you can get under them, then congrats to you, you did a good job. But these aren't your counters, but they're not an optimal matchup for you. So let's go ahead and talk about the better matchups for Uma. So I'm putting Abysscraft here, even though Abysscraft does have a new build for control. This is the form of Abysscraft aggro, because all we've known so far is Abysscraft aggro, and to the world, Abysscraft control still kind of stinks, I guess. Even though it doesn't, because we have all those new cards from Uva that set it up very nicely and give it, the nice things. But we're just going to look at the Abysscraft aggro because that's the stats and the history we have with Abyss. So the better matchups are, in terms of Abysscraft aggro, Forestcraft, and Swordcraft. Now, in terms of Swordcraft, you're going to have to match them with followers. Can you put pressure on the board better than Swordcraft? I don't think so, but it is a better matchup than the other, decks that we saw earlier or in the last one, because they have tons of removal. These decks kind of struggle in terms of removal, not Forestcraft too much if they have Archer, but it looks like Forestcraft is going to be deviating into another type of playstyle coming into set 3. So, but these are the 3 decks that are probably your best matchups, and you'll probably have a better time going up against because you can probably maintain them pretty well. Just the only one you need to watch out for in the better matchup is Swordcraft, because they have a better late game and they have the tempo, and you can swing wide, and Swordcraft doesn't have that many removal cards. They did get the Takayo Teo that we just saw earlier, but that only deals with one thing. That doesn't deal it to the board, and they don't have access to like a whole bunch of board wipes, so you should be fine in terms of these three decks. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into the tech options for Uma. So in terms of Uma, there are a couple tech options that we have. So we have TM Opera O. This definitely deals with Leonidas on those late turns, and it actually is very, very good. So you select the enemy file on the field and banish it and draw a card, get rid of that Leonidas. Make sure you do it after they play their Leonidas. Make sure you don't have an engaged follower so they can't swing at it, so get that amulet off. But we also have another card, on the right that also deals with the Leonidas resolve. But going next, we have Symbolic Rudolph. If you're getting to the top couple cards, you hit Symbolic Rudolph, you're going up against an aggressive deck. This is actually pretty good. You get Symbolic Rudolph, you play your next turn, Racer, swing into that follower, get Takayo Teo that also, can ping things for a certain amount of damage depending on how much you have on the field. This is pretty good. And then we have Matinkenhauser that really just deals with the amulets. So we have Path to Purgatory that is really a really good counter to your deck, because you can swing hard, very good. And they hit a weird awkward point where they can take 3, like let's say they're at 9 and they go play Path to Purgatory and you have your board full. That really hurts you, especially if you do your big swing turn and you've let them at a pretty good amount of health and they wipe your entire board. Then that's pretty hard. But if they play Path to Purgatory very early, you can use Matinkenhauser, go ahead and get rid of that amulet, not have to worry about it. Make sure if they only have 1, then it's up for them. But sometimes people might run 2, and that'll be bad for you. So Matinkenhauser definitely helps with the Leonidas resolve and any of the amulets and Path to Purgatory that really does hurt your deck. Alright guys, if you know me and you know how we do things on Enverse Academy, we always give a grade for any of the decks and the breakdowns that we do. So if you haven't watched the tier list video, go ahead and do that. Also, speaking of the tier list video, I appreciate you guys because that video blew up. That was a lot. I had a lot of views. I think that's my most viewed video. So thank you guys so much for giving me the love and appreciation, and just make sure you guys subscribe and keep the love flowing. I love making this content for you guys. I love you guys. Make sure you keep being awesome and keep playing Shadowverse and keep being the best person you can be. I love that. But back to the grade. We always do a grade on any of these decks just from how they perform and how well they do. So with Uma, looking at Uma and how it does, we gave Uma a tier 1.5 that can do really well at a tournament. So most of the time we usually give decks S or an A, or sometimes a B if it's not really on the good side of things. But with Uma, it seems like it has very good cards. It has lots of good cards, and it has the rainbow colors of every aspect of craft. You have the versatility of forest craft. You can swing and rush with sword craft, and then you have the stability of like Dragoncraft with having that intimidate follower that's very weird for your opponent to swing into. You have the spells in Runecraft, and you don't really take too much from Havencraft because Havencraft is really known for its removal and its amulets, and the amulets in Uma aren't too special. So there's that. But how we are going to grade Uma is that it has the aggressiveness of Storm, and then you can buff your followers. So I couldn't give Uma anything less than an A, because Uma is very good at doing what it does. It has lots of potential routes that you want to go depending on how you build it. So it really has versatility like Forestcraft, and even in the right hands, Forestcraft does kind of feel kind of weird whenever you do things, but Uma, it's just weird. It just does it a little bit better in terms of that, because you have to see those Rose Queens in the later Forestcraft, but in the later for Uma, you just need to see your 4-cost Daiwa to she can get Storm that turn if you play that 1-cost less spell, and then have the other 2 spells to remove things. And with Daiwa in play too, that's just a lot that you're able to do in 1 turn. And you can swing face for a lot, along with the special weak buff, along with the vodka buff. It's just doing a whole bunch of stuff. Alright guys, well that was the end of the video. Thank you for sticking around and listening. I appreciate you so much. I love you guys. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me how I did. Tell me what I did and didn't do. I do this stuff for you guys, and let's go ahead and work on this stuff together. I might have missed a couple things with Uma. It's still a little fresh to me, but this is what I've gathered so far in terms of information. I like it so much. Alright guys, make sure you're safe whatever you're doing tonight, and safe whatever you're doing for the rest of the year. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.
I gave you all my love, baby, my heart is cold when you're around. You warm it up, liquid gold, baby, yeah, you warm it up, liquid gold, baby, and my affection, all that paper you wasted. Take my love.